Welcome everybody to the plenary session. My name is Susanna Olszewska. I'm the tutor in anthropology here at St. John's. I'm also the college's Fellow for Women, a position that may not have existed when some of you were here, but it does now, and I get to do lovely events like this and meet lots of alumni and students and talk about women's related issues. So this plenary session is intended to draw together the themes from the parallel breakout sessions that we've had now, because obviously we couldn't all attend more than one. So we're hoping to draw together some of the main themes and questions and issues, and especially unresolved issues perhaps that these sessions raised. Now, the program intriguingly invites us to reflect on the wider topic of what it's like to ... and then there's something seems to have been missed off there, but I think trying to remember our organizing sessions, it was to reflect on what it's like to be a woman in the 21st century, but you can also fill in the gaps with whatever else you'd like to reflect on what it's like to be. So in this session we will start by inviting the reporters from each of the parallel sessions to summarize some of the key themes that emerged in terms of people's key takeaways and things that they were very excited to share from their particular sessions, but also issues that remained unresolved for them. We are a little bit tight for time, so each reporter will have 5 minutes. And then there will be about 15 minutes to take questions from the floor as well. I may try to tie together some themes at the end if there's time, but I don't feel I have to. The session is recorded. The questions from the audience will not be, unless you're happy for us to repeat them, and then they'll be answered by some of the panelists here. So thank you. Should I introduce you all? So Dr. Lucy Cragg is from the University of Nottingham, assistant professor in psychology. Natasha Wood, I'm just meeting for the first time. Perhaps you can introduce yourself. Alex Bollin is going to be telling us about the motherhood and parenting session. And Kate Molesworth will be talking about leadership and transition to board membership. And Lucy's going to be talking about the academic transitions panel, and Natasha's going to be talking about the definitions of success and alternative definitions of success, perhaps. So I'll hand over to Lucy now, perhaps, to start.
Hi, thanks, Susanna. Is that on? Yes. So I was in the session on transitions to an academic career. So mainly looking at, there was a group of us talking about an academic career and starting an academic career, and what are the important things to do, as an early career researcher if you're aiming into that field, to go into that field, what might be beneficial, things to think about, and how to kind of think of an academic career alongside other careers, coming into it at different stages, or as well as kind of from a traditional pathway from a PhD straight from your undergraduate. Some of the key takeaways that we had were about being ambitious for all aspects of your life. So not just work. I think there are lots of themes here that might crop up across the different sessions, but being ambitious for all areas of your life, and really, so academia can be quite cutthroat, as I'm sure lots of things are, and there's a lot of comparing yourself with other people, and lots of knockbacks and rejections and things. So one of the other key takeaways was, even if you don't have to, do your own performance review. So it could be once a year, but just really making notes of your own achievements and what you've done, because we have all achieved much more than we think. We talked a lot about the tendency, particularly as women, to downplay our achievements, and that we really should be, recognising that what we achieve in all areas of our life. Something to share. So we talked quite a bit about confidence and about imposter syndrome. So one of the early career people asked us, do you still feel imposter syndrome? When does it stop? And her something that she'd like to share is that, which I don't know if this is encouraging or not, but it doesn't really go away. You still get imposter syndrome, really, whatever stage you are, but that perhaps you get better at, in some ways, kind of maybe dealing with that. But the unresolved issue is that actually we don't have the answers as to how to take away that completely. yeah, that was our session. I don't know if there's anything else. Susanna was in it as well, so I don't know if there's anything else that I'd forgotten that you wanted to add.
No, it might come
Okay, so I was in the diverse definitions of success session, and we covered an awful lot, a very valid discussion. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank everybody. I think every single person in the room contributed to the discussion one way or the other. We spent a lot of time talking about the context of success for us as women in the 21st century, and particularly we spent quite a lot of time discussing how our Oxford badge, our degree badge, our qualification badge can warp how we are perceived within society or our own approaches to our definitions of success. So to speak to the questions that have been asked of us, what would I be most excited to share with others? I think the thing that came through was that we have agency over defining our own success, and we're very good at allowing society to define success for us, and that can have quite an influence over how we see our own success. Professionally, in particular, we don't necessarily define success within our personal lives or particular professions particularly well. What will I take away? I'm going to be much more careful about the language that I use around success, around resilience. I think, and this came through in a lot of the discussions, that we're all, many of us, used the wrong kind of language when defining our success. And you mentioned imposter syndrome there. That was certainly something that we danced around. I don't think the word was mentioned until right at the end, but it certainly was a theme that was coming through. And so we need to be more confident in the language that we use in defining our success, wherever that might be, personal, professional, elsewhere within our lives. And then there were a couple of things that I wanted to highlight that I think remain unresolved from the conversation that we had. And the first is around the I knew I was going to stumble over this word, plurality of the definition of success. We spent much of the session talking about professional success, and how success is largely associated with very specific vocations, and that is often rooted during our time as undergraduates, particularly at top universities, or our experiences at Oxford, and that we need to be looking at to change that and change those definitions. And the second thing that I think remains unresolved, which is a big thing for me personally, is the social, professional, and political infrastructure in society as an unlevel playing field for how success is defined for women versus men, and those preconceptions, those biases that exist within society as to what success is for men versus women.
Thank you, Natasha. Now we're going to hear from Alex. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? So I led the discussions on motherhood and parenting, and it was a fantastic discussion, really rich, really open, lots of honesty, lots of sharing. It was great. I think one of the things which was interesting about the discussions was we were all at quite different stages. So a couple of people in the group were thinking about motherhood and wondering about taking the plunge and worrying about how can you reconcile your life as a mother with your working life. We also had in our group people obviously with children and also grandchildren as well. So it was really, really fascinating hearing different perspectives of different stages and also different generations, so sort of mothering in different contexts. So in terms of what the kind of key things we took away as a group, I think one of them was, if you're thinking about it, don't overthink it. Just do it. We talked about how it's really hard to imagine motherhood if you're not yet a mother or not a mother. The mystery of motherhood was, I think, how Maggie put it, which I thought was a lovely way of putting it. We talked about how barriers can be overcome. I mean, there is no magic solution to the sort of family-work dilemma, but thinking about it in terms of what can I do, how can I get around this, and support networks was something which came out as being really important, and I'm sure that's going to be a theme across all the different things we're looking at today. Also partners as well, and choosing your partner wisely was something which we talked about quite a bit. And it's interesting to hear you all laugh, because I think that obviously resonates. A theme which I think is relevant to motherhood, but I think probably relevant, again, across all the different streams of things we're thinking about today, is don't be a perfectionist. And a related point is don't have too high expectations. And it's really interesting hearing what you were saying about the definition of success. And it is about what are the expectations we're bringing to the table here, and how can we reframe them in a way that is going to be more positive and helpful to us as individuals. We talked quite a bit about the different phases of motherhood and the sort of intergenerational dynamics, which I think is really fascinating, and thinking about our relationships with our parents and also potentially with our children. And then just going back to what I was saying at the start about how contexts change, times change, it was really interesting talking to some of the younger people in the group about how difficult things are financially, you know, just a simple thing like buying a house, which for my generation was a much more straightforward thing, and how that has an impact on your life decisions about parenting, but more broadly as well. In terms of unresolved issues, and the session was called Motherhood and Parenting, which was Susanna's brilliant suggestion, let's not just focus on motherhood, but guess what? We just focus on motherhood. And as we were sort of wrapping up at the end and reflecting our discussions, someone said, we didn't really talk about fathers, did we? So that is very much the unresolved issue, and actually that is a really important part of the jigsaw, really, when it comes to thinking about how we reconcile our working lives and our family lives.
Thank you, Alex. Oh, Kate will now tell us about the Being Board Ready panel.
So our group met in response to the studies that are in the news a lot about how fewer women there are in directorate positions. Just to give the background to this, I mean, studies vary depending upon which kinds of boards are being reviewed, but mostly data are only available for public organisations and companies. But it's estimated that only 20% of board positions are held by women. And it's as low as 3% in Japan, and it seems that the peak is reached at 35% in Norway. So in the group that I facilitated, we examined why there were fewer women in these formal leadership positions. And in order to support each other, and especially younger women who would like to take leadership positions, we asked our panelists, who all had board of director experience, how they transitioned to their leadership roles. And we tried to distill from that some tips on enabling factors. So looking at what was holding women back, obviously there was sexism, but also biologicalism. The fact that women are the reproductive units for having children, and that their careers are often not as linear. But we also discussed the fact that women often, maybe less than men, will move directly to formal leadership, but might actually lead from the side. So we also, like some of the other groups, questioned what leadership and seniority in the workplace looks like. We also noted that, like the Second World War, the COVID-19 crisis has had an impact on highlighting women's leadership because of some of those more female traits in leadership, such as inclusion and caring holistically for other workers, came to the fore. So this highlighted the fact that maybe models of leadership need to be reconsidered. And one of the ways that we can control that is by reconsidering it ourselves and how we want to act in terms of leadership. In terms of some of the takeaway messages, because we really wanted to have some concrete messages for younger women, and I have to say we had a fabulous array of women in terms of ages within our group, from some of us who come from the 1980s in St John's and some more younger members. And through the panel describing their different transitions into leadership positions, we saw many different routes. And although these routes aren't open to everyone, we saw that there were clear routes, whatever your advantages or disadvantages. So some of our panelists had very helpful mentors who had in actual fact pushed or I think one of our panel members described coercion actually into leadership. And so she obviously had a really super mentor and a super leader who was prepared to do that. Others described having champions or role models. But others also described how literally their stepping up to the plate, speaking out, and speaking with informed passion also meant that they were invited into leadership positions. So I think the take-home messages are, whatever your route, if you're well-informed, if you're passionate about something and talk about it, that there will be a route for you, simply that your motivation will take you along. One very important issue that was posed by a member of the group who was in early to mid-career was, given that women are often under scrutiny and there is a little bit of prejudice, at least in some organisations, actually voiced the fear of making a mistake. And the take-home message that we came up with a group in order to deal with this was, we may have this, I think you spoke about the badge, the Oxford badge, and some of the disadvantages with that. But one of the things is, coming from Oxford, we're all very clearly people who prepare and have knowledge at our fingertips. So it's like, with this Oxford way of working, you can own your mistakes because they will be made from a position that was strategic. And mistakes can always be made because the environment changes, the ballpark changes. So own it and stand by it when you're challenged simply because you might seem like an easy target. Don't be afraid to make mistakes because everyone makes them. Things that are left unresolved actually overlapped with, I was thinking about Alex's group, because one of our younger group members said, you know, I've got to make this decision between a leadership career that I would like and whether to have a family. And what this really said to me was that it talked about the importance of this network that we have within St John's, because now we have some of the first women who are really reaching that mature period in the life course. The benefits this offers is we can speak across generations. So college now has quite a mature generation of women. It now also has quite a diverse population. So within our network, we have the possibility to speak across cultures, to speak across life experiences, and to speak across the life course. So let's use our network to do this, to share our stories on our decision making and how we feel about the decisions that we've made later in the life course. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you very much to all of our panelists and, of course, to all of the speakers and facilitators of all the sessions for what sound like some really rich discussions that at least in our session we felt we just didn't have enough time for because they were so fascinating. We could have easily talked for another hour, I think, even in our small group. I don't want to talk too much. I think you all have questions and we're also probably getting hungry. I just wanted to say that the themes that have really jumped out to me from across these summaries are the sort of the twofold work that we have to do, unfortunately, yet more work that we have to do as women, both internally within our own minds, sometimes our own mentalities, and also culturally in terms of redefining some of these key concepts that may constrain us, but that we can actually sometimes turn into strength. So whether that's redefining notions of success for us in our own minds and for the people around us, redefining what counts as success in academia or any other job to include all of the other aspects of your life, redefining what counts as good parenting, as to not be perfectionist about everything, and also the importance of support networks and mentoring, I think, are absolutely key. And of course, that's what we're all doing today, that we're trying to extend those networks across generations, horizontally, vertically, and so on. Please do talk to people that you knew already in the past, but also make lots of new friends today, because those are precisely the kinds of relationships that will help us achieve all of the things that we've heard about. I'm going to stop there, but I will now open it up to the floor and would love to take your questions.